It's Jessica DaMassa with WTF Health, reporting for the Healthcare blog. Joining me right now to talk about innovation in the pharma industry is Paul Sims. He is the chairman for Eyeforpharma, which is, I don't know, how would you describe it, Paul? You guys are like media moguls when it comes to the pharma industry, and they've got two conferences coming up, one coming up here in March in Barcelona and the other coming up in Philadelphia in April, to unite the world of pharma and talk about what is next. So Paul, welcome. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Pleasure, and I think your description was just right.
Right, exactly. I made you as big and important as possible, so I'm sure you love it. All right, so Paul, so let's jump in. I mean, we were talking a little bit about what's going on in the pharma industry, particularly around innovation and startups. I mean, it seems like recently there's been like, I feel like the pharma community has kind of grown to accept the startup community a little bit more than it had over the past 2 years. It seems like there are a lot more digital therapeutics out there than there once were. It seems like startups are getting smarter in terms of speaking pharma's language. They're talking about, you know, patents in a different way. They're talking about regulations in a way that they were not talking about at all a few years ago. So what do you think has changed, and what are you seeing going on right now? Give us a little bit of the state of play of pharma innovation.
Okay, it's a necessary evolution, and it's one that is very welcome. I mean, so many digital health companies start out with a sort of B2C mentality, and they quickly pivot when they realize that healthcare in general is a fairly institutionalized game. And it's great to see the maturity of these companies really becoming understanding of those processes. But even more importantly, it's great to see that pharma is actually, and not just for a sort of nice little culture share kind of a situation, is actually forming genuine partnerships with these companies, which I actually believe is very much the way in which our companies need to be able to operate going into the future. I would actually argue that the future model of pharma is far more akin to a more platform-based model, where pharma companies are not necessarily reliant on their own innovation, their own R&D all the time, but far more reliant on a wider ecosystem and a far more fragmented ecosystem of innovators that's going to enable them to actually see those innovations actually coming to life through working with a pharma company that has the expertise in, you know, clinical areas, has expertise in access, has obviously the large sales and marketing commercial workforces to make those innovations see the light of day.
Okay, so I like this idea of, like, I don't know, the platform version of a pharma company. That's pretty novel. I've not heard anybody talk about that before. So, like, would they, like, kind of, like, acquire or buy in, like, the little pieces that kind of would support the development of new drugs? Or, like, how do you see that working? Because that's completely undoing their business model of, like, control and own everything.
It is, but I mean, obviously we already see the roots happening. I mean, people think that by relinquishing control of the R&D process, of that innovation process, which of course pharma has for a century now been an expert in perfecting with a very, very vertical value chain, they think that somehow that lack of control is going to be worse for a pharma company. But look at the most valuable companies today. Compared to 10 years ago, you know, you had ExxonMobil type companies, very capital-based, typical traditional linear style company. Now the largest companies, as we know, are the Googles and Facebooks and all of those. And on the one hand, you can just say, oh, they're tech companies. But actually, if you really think about them, what they are is platform companies. They're companies which have created innovation, not through necessarily investing in that innovation themselves. Google relies on us to make all of our websites. Facebook relies on us to make all of our content. And these platform-based companies are actually worth, you know, a lot more than traditional forms. And they use a completely different business model. And of course, you're exactly right. The effort goes into not just supporting the patient or the consumer or whatever it is on one side of the equation, but also in supporting the ecosystem for the producer, the innovators, the scientists. So suddenly pharma's job becomes supporting through capital, it comes supporting through learning and understanding and educating and actually working in partnership with startup companies, and digital therapeutics are a very nice example of where that can be, but also with biotech and other innovators. I'm sure we all know that drug discovery is becoming more digital now, for example. So there are plenty of partnerships that can be made, and I believe that for pharma companies to really thrive, they should consider themselves platform companies.
Okay, I had to poke on the business model part of this because, like, okay, so the examples you gave are great and it makes total sense. You know, I mean, Google, Facebook, yes, definitely platform companies. I mean, but they've started out with their business model that way. Is it possible for a pharma company with the business models that they've had in place for hundreds of years? I mean, right? Bayer's over 100 years old. Is it possible for them to pivot that way and undo the business model that they have in order to adopt a new business model like this? Or how do you see that working?
Well, I think that there's probably going to be two forms of platform companies that emerge initially. And one of them I don't see as being pharma's playground to begin with. I think that's probably going to come from B2C companies like Amazon, for example. But the scientific platform side, I would argue, already exists in some kind of form. I mean, open innovation has been something that companies have been trying to do for a while, perhaps not in a mainstream way. But more and more these days, digital therapeutics are a perfect example. There's almost no example of a pharma company producing pure digital therapeutics. Of course, they do beyond pill stuff, and of course, marketing and sales is becoming more digital. But in terms of pure digital therapies, there are very few pharma companies, I can probably count them on my fingers, that have in-house developed those kind of products. So they are partnering. And the reason why they're partnering is because of those cultural reasons that those kind of companies can innovate more quickly. They don't have the 10 to 20 year life cycles. They don't have the sense of, bureaucracy and compliance that they need to learn, and that's where the pharma company will help. But in terms of coming up with the innovation in the first place, it makes far more sense to partner.
Okay, so we've got a lot of startups that watch us. And I mean, sure, what you're talking about is really appealing to them because they've been trying, some of them have been trying to get into that space, for a while. So what would be, I guess, like your best for a startup that's either, far enough along where they are ready to partner with a pharma company that is looking to change their business model in such a way where they are moving more towards being a platform type company. What would your advice be for a startup, no matter what stage that they're at, in terms of like, how do you get yourself ready for like the new era of the pharmaceutical company that is looking outside of its walls? What do you need to do to kind of, make sure that your own contribution to that, whether it be your innovation, your IP, or even your team is ready to participate and work with, these giant corporations?
Well, just recognize that in the short to medium term, the giant corporations will own the ecosystem, I'm afraid. So the reality is that you have to smarten up when it comes to understanding the clinical process, evidence-based, ensuring that your product, whatever it might be, is actually going to be proven as worthy within this market, because only then will it be prescribed ultimately. Only then will it actually receive the reimbursement currently. Otherwise, you're playing in the consumer space, in a very crowded consumer space of many health apps, etc. And there are some digital therapeutics companies that think that they can go to market all by themselves. Aquila, who produce obviously video games, being one of them. The people that I talk to are somewhat skeptical that is going to be viable for them and for most of the other companies. There isn't that recognition about just how hard it actually is, how long it actually takes, and how embedded the processes currently are in a way of thinking. So become ready to be a partner by speaking the right language, by understanding the value chain that these companies use. Trust me, if pharma could do it more quickly, more easily, more cheaply, it would. But, these things are here for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always talk about the disruptive kind of innovation where it's like we just hope that the industry as it is just like stops and like changes trajectory dramatically. But it's like it does seem to be more of a metered step by step, moving along, evolutionary kind of process towards change. Do you think, though, that maybe there is, I guess, the potential with a lot of the things we were talking before the interview, a little bit about some of the, the political climate around, both of our countries. So we've got, got Trump here and the Affordable Care Act and the changes that has gone through. And you can feel it in the healthcare market here. And we've talked about Brexit and even the impact on the pharmaceutical market there, because of that legislation and things that have happened over there. Do you think that, just the socio-political forces that are like at will here are going to maybe force some more disruptive innovation in the pharma industry? What do you think? If there were to be a time, could it be now?
Are whirlwinds, but they're largely blowing against some pretty sturdy brick walls, I would say. So
Okay.
even though Brexit is forcing us here in the UK to lose, for example, the EMA, the major regulatory body in Europe, that's moving out of the UK. Things like that are happening. They're causing disruption in the short term, but I don't see how any of that changes anything that I've said so far.
Okay. No, fair enough. You're going to be right no matter what.
The ACA, again, it's slow moving. Healthcare is a mess. No one will disagree with that phrase.
No, it's true. No, 100% agreement.
That mess is something that we all know that if we started again from scratch, it would be done completely differently from how it is today. But we have what we have. Those things are not going to go away overnight, no matter how good your app is or how good your solution is. You're going to have to play the rules, at least in the short term. In the long term, I mentioned earlier that I think that some of the B2C companies in technology might change the rules. I think that Apple and Amazon are the two leading. Apple providing the platform and the support of the Fire standard, which enables everything to connect very well to the device, will provide a lot. But I think actually even more so the fact that Amazon and its owning of half the prime households being half of US households,
Yeah.
with their adoption of a new health insurance model, and even more importantly for Amazon, their ability to basically free cash. They have a business model that doesn't require them to make a profit, and investors that allow them to operate in that way. So compared to any other company, they've got far more money to play in this game, and they are going to create a non-profit based health insurance company. And once they start enabling normal people to become part of the insurer that they're going to create, I think that's going to make a very different playing field for everybody, including pharma and startups in this space. So that's not going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, I do want to push you though, because I'm curious about what you guys are talking about then. So I'm saying you guys, you and your audience, you and the people within the pharma community that are attending your conferences, that are, reading your website and things like that and getting their news. Like, I'm sure this is a hot topic. It's a hot topic here along all of our different little silos. Apple and Amazon, what are they going to do? So what are the pharmaceutical companies talking about when it relates to them? Are they concerned about like supply chain disruption, or are they excited about that? I mean, we've got, Amazon acquired PillPack, and everybody here is talking about how that's going to, compete directly or compete in a different way with a lot of other, not only prescription delivery, but even like the CVS pharmacies and the other pharmacies that are out there, and kind of disrupt them or edge in on their market share a little bit. So what are you guys talking about? I'd like to know, like, what are some of the hot topics that are kind of coming up in this space?
I have to be brutally honest and say that I'm disappointed with the industry's efforts so far. However, there is signs of change. There's lots of programs. I mean, the whole pharma industry has been in a state that I would call experimental, really since the recession hit 2008. Ever since we've known that the traditional blockbuster model is not necessarily going to be the one that carries us forward, but we've been in search for that model, and R&D has not paid off in that time. So we have been in an experimental place. We're trying things. We're making partnerships with these technology companies, but they are pilots. And there are some efforts. For example, Novartis with the Biome near your base are doing some very good work, and they have some real partnerships with Apple. J&J just released a good partnership with Apple as well. So there are some things that could become greater in terms of mainstream. But I think that the pharma companies are still operating in a reasonably dinosaur-like environment and are not natural partners for these companies at the moment. They need to make a lot of internal changes before that can actually happen to a greater degree. They know this. They're trying. They're moving super tankers. They're trying to convert them into a flotilla of speedboats, but it's not something that can be done overnight.
I love that. So, okay, so then give me a sense of like, if they're trying to take this on, right, and then I'm sure they're worried about other things as well, including keeping their existing businesses running. Give me an insight of some of the things then that you guys are talking about coming up here in March at your conference. So, Eyeforpharma, you guys have been building the program all year. Usually it's one of those programs that's pretty dynamic. You guys are addressing some of the hot issues. What things people are worried about in the industry and the things, the opportunities, that the spaces they could get into. So give us a little bit of a sense, like what are some of the sessions that you're most excited for and why?
Okay. Well, the whole point of what we do is simply to make sure that all of these innovators are in one place. So we have traditional pharma, but now we have far more innovators from outside of pharma as well. And
Like, for example, give me an example.
What,
like
of the innovator?
Yeah, the innovators. Who's there?
Like, Babylon and...
Paul, if there's one thing you got to understand, if I'm going to go to a party, I got to know who's going to the party.
That's true. But if you're there, then that makes up the main part of the.
It does, but
yeah, make sure you're there. But the theme of the event is medicine is just the beginning, and the point of that is to illustrate that the entire solution is never purely the medicine, or very rarely purely the medicine. Sometimes it's not even including the medicine. Pharma companies need to have a wider portfolio of innovation that goes far beyond medicines, whether it's a drug plus solution or whether it's a without the pill at all solution. And
we've gone from beyond the pill now to without the pill at all. Yeah, I like that.
I don't know if that's a phrase or if it's something I
We've heard you. Oh no, it's a phrase now. You've heard it here first. You can hashtag that, without the pill at all.
Without the pill. Yeah, who needs pills?
That was really good.
No, but I like the thinking. In many ways, the drugs plus the actual with the pill strategies are the ones that are actually more advanced than the without the pill ones.
Right.
But without the pill is a good mentality, because you just have to start. It forces you to start from the patient and work backwards. Something which, again, companies in pharma do very badly. Companies like Amazon, they actually have a work backwards system of innovation from how to make sure they're as customer centric as possible. That's how they work, and it's not how we work. We work from the molecule upwards, and it's not necessarily the right way. So there are individual sessions. There are dozens. There's more than well over 100 speakers, and there's thousands of people involved. So I can't single out specific sessions.
No, I think that's great though. That's perfect. That's perfect.
It's a mass movement that's we're trying to push pharma into a new place, and we don't have a Steve Jobs in our industry. We've got to do it on a collective basis and change the mindset for everyone.
That's cool. No, I think that's great. And I know you guys have been doing more of a push on including startups at the conference. And I understand that for the Barcelona conference, it's free registration for the startups. Is that right? Or did I just make it free?
Absolutely. And the reason is, we've traditionally been the pharma event. It's where all the pharma people come. We know now, as I've just explained, the future of pharma is as a platform. That means pharma cannot rely on its own innovation solely going forward. We need startups to be part of the picture, and if I need to make sure that it's a place for startups to be by opening the doors to them, then that's what needs to happen. So that's what we're doing. We need that innovation for the future of not just our industry, but for healthcare in general.
Oh my God, I completely agree. So startups, if you're out there, this is an opportunity of a lifetime to go free reg to the Barcelona Eyeforpharma conference and network your way around the pharma industry with all of their innovators who are actually interested in hearing what you have to say. That's perfect. It's like shooting fish in a barrel, so to speak, right? And so, Paul, one last question for you then. So, as this new year has started, it's the beginning of, it's February already, and your conferences are coming up here, March and April. And so any predictions, I guess, for anything big that you see coming down the pike this year? You don't have to name any names, but is there any good gossip you could give us about the pharma industry, or any good predictions of something that you see might happen this year? Yeah. Anything?
Well, obviously, I could have told you about all of the mergers that have happened recently. I saw them all through my crystal ball. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, there will be more pharma mega mergers. I say unfortunately because, as my good friend Professor Brian Smith would say, pharma companies merging with each other is a little bit like having sex with your cousins, because pharma companies, they cross-pollinate, they are incestuous, they form short-term solutions through these kind of mergers. What they really need, as if I've not banged this drum loud enough for you today, then I'm going to bang it one more time, but what they really need are partnerships with other companies other than. So if you happen to be in a pharma company right now listening to this, or if you happen to be part of a company that's not a pharma company, then the two of you should get together, make beautiful, sweet love, and ideally do something that's not just another another version of another pharma company.
Oh my God. You know what, Paul, I don't know how to really, I don't know what to say. I mean, I really don't know what to say.
All the flutter, haven't I? I apologize.
No, I absolutely think that was beautifully articulated. There could not have been a better analogy for that. So for all the cousins out there, and oh my goodness, this is great. Well, if that doesn't make anybody want to go to Eyeforpharma, I don't know what will.
You're lost. There's no hope.
There's no hope. I love it. Well, Paul, thank you so much for your refreshing candor. I mean, it's nice to get an honest look at the pharma industry and all of its magnificence and inbred, and the need for innovation outside to come in.
Exactly. The point is that we want to be different. We don't.
We got your point. We got your point. We got it. All right. So to check out this registration, if you are a startup company and you really want to go to this party now, check out Eyeforpharma's website. Take a look. The registration is going to be free for you. For everybody else, good luck. And then don't forget there's an opportunity in the U.S. too for you guys to check out what this conference is all about. It's the same lovely people who put it on with the same mentality. So make sure to check out the Philadelphia conference, Eyeforpharma as well, coming in April. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. I'm Jessica DaMassa. Paul, I mean, I'm pretty much speechless. That really blew my mind. That doesn't happen often, so thank you. Pleasure to talk with you. I'm Jessica DaMassa. It's Paul Sims from Eyeforpharma. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.